Hi everyone, I'm Karen MacNeil and welcome to winespeed.com's People to Know insider interviews with the most fascinating and important people in the wine business. And today we're talking with Bruce Phillips, welcome Bruce, who is the owner with his family of Vine Hill Ranch, one of the most important vineyards in the Napa Valley. It sits right at the foot of the Mayacamas Mountains in the Napa Valley. Bruce was the former Director of Information Technology for Constellation. I take that to mean you know a lot about computers. And more importantly, I think to me, the Director of Expansion, I'm not sure I've ever heard that title before, at the juice company Odwalla. Today, though, he and his family are very focused on Vine Hill Ranch. So, Bruce, welcome.
Thank you so much, Garrett.
Yeah. So I want to start by saying your family has grown grapes since the 1860s here in the Napa Valley. What does it mean to carry on a legacy like that? I mean, it feels like a heavy responsibility.
Well, to clarify, my family only arrived here in 1956, but there has been wine grape growing here at Vine Hill Ranch since the 1860s. So it places Vine Hill Ranch at an early iteration of vineyard development, recognizing that George Yount got this whole thing started back in the 1830s. But my family arrived here in 1956, and this place was entirely different. And I mean, in our lifetimes, the industry in Napa Valley has evolved in remarkable ways.
Well, what was that like? I mean, what was the Napa Valley like when you first arrived?
Well, we lost my mother and father about 7 years ago, but as my father used to say, you know, this valley was a remarkably diverse, very depressed agricultural economy. I mean, the biggest cash crop in 1956 in Napa County was prunes. And in this area, the number 2 cash crop actually at the time was walnut. And so Vine Hill Ranch had been largely rededicated to walnut post-Prohibition. You know, my father can be credited with bringing the vineyard back. But my grandfather brought us here after selling his ranch out on the coast at Point Reyes to the federal government to help form the Point Reyes National Seashore. And it was a remarkable time to arrive in the Napa Valley because if you had a little cash in your pocket, which he did, having sold to the federal government, you could piece together remarkable land holdings. Landowners were just trying to piece together cash flow to stay on the land at the time. They didn't see the opportunity yet around.
I can only imagine, even in the 1950s and 60s, the cost of land in the Napa Valley. I know that when Domaine Chandon was formed, Louis Vuitton and Moet Hennessy bought that land for about $1,000 an acre. It's kind of your neighbor, and today that land would go for at least $500,000 an acre. So in the 50s and 60s, it must have been incredible. What was I thinking? Let me ask you this. You are on top of a really spectacular piece of ground, and your vineyards are immaculate. You sell also your main your main source of revenue is farming, although you make wine yourself. The people you sell to, Harlan's Bond, Accendo, Colgan, these are really big names in the Napa Valley. Is it difficult? I'm imagining that those people are demanding people.
Yes, but it's, you know, we really got to harken back to when phylloxera was so devastating to the entire Napa Valley, California for that matter, in the mid-'80s, and my father envisioned redeveloping this vineyard entirely to Cabernet Sauvignon, which at the time was a very forward vision, and with the help of people like you would know, like Tony Soter and advisors from the University of California and Cal State Fresno, they really endeavored to understand the underlying architecture of this site in order to bring it forward appropriately under one variety in Cabernet. And the vision had always been to align winemaking atop those vineyard sites, and then lift the reputation of the vineyard through the wines that were produced. And you mentioned, Bill Harlan, his winemaker Bob Levy, and now Corey Empting, instrumental in that. But today we enjoy their 12 vineyard partners alongside VHR in the field with us this year, and 8 of those vineyard partners are releasing vineyard designate wines, all of which are gaining tremendous accolade, and it's vision realized. It's a remarkable day in the sun for Vine Hill Ranch.
You must be incredibly proud.
Very proud.
Yeah. And prescient that it could work out that way. I mean, what character trait do you think you possess that has allowed you to be so successful?
Well, first and foremost, my grandfather had a hell of an eye for land, and it's interesting to consider, when he arrived here, my father, who was his son-in-law, was his confidant in the purchase and this land search that went on. And they almost positioned us up in what is today Rutherford, along the river. And funnily enough, back in those days, that was the most valued ground.
Yes.
Because it was so fertile. Loamy soils from where the river breached its banks. You could grow anything there.
Corn.
Yeah.
It was Kansas.
Exactly. But he loved the way this site just sort of falls off the Mayacamas Range. And he actually, whether it was Bear Valley Ranch out on the coast or here, he just had a remarkable eye for quality property and positioned us here. I lost my thought.
Well, the idea of what character trait you possess, and you've very diplomatically shifted to your grandfather, but I think you must have had something to do with this.
Well, first and foremost, we are on a tremendous vineyard site, and we farm it appropriately. But I guess the trait that I may have inherited from my father is understanding what you don't understand and bringing around you people that can advise you appropriately. And so I have the benefit of our vineyard manager of almost 30 years now, Mike Wolf, our winemaker on the wine side, Francoise Pechon, of course my wife Heather. We all work together to bring this forward, and of course with the support of my family, 2 sisters and their families. All of us remain wholly vested in this property and moving it forward.
It's so heartwarming, really, to hear farmers who love farming. I mean, and I realize that you might not be out there every day on a tractor, but modern farming, to be so committed to a piece of ground is a very special, soulful thing.
It is.
Yeah.
I never thought I would be this 3rd generation grape grower, winemaker, but it's so fulfilling to be on this site and stewarding it forward to the next generation. Wine grape growing and winemaking is a generational prospect. I mean, to be successful, you have to take a long view. Investments we're making in the vineyard, I will be gone when these investments have to be re-upped. And to me, that's remarkably soulful. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. What wine, other than Napa Valley wine, could you not live without? I'm imagining that at least occasionally you drink something else.
Yes, Heather and we love white Burgundy. French Chardonnay is Achilles' heel, and Champagne.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you chose 2 of the least expensive wines on the planet. Yes, okay.
We're not alone in these passions.
No, I'm afraid I'm somewhat guilty. So you're quoted as saying, and I'm going to read this quote so that I get it correctly, "Napa Valley today is full of egotists without much perspective, making mistakes I've already seen." What mistakes were you referring to?
Good Lord, when did I say that?
1869, I believe.
Well, I think that, to my earlier point, I think a number of people the stakes have gotten much higher in the Napa Valley. The costs, all of our inputs are more expensive. Our practices have become much more sophisticated. And back as early as I can remember, in the 70s, interesting people started coming to the Napa Valley that were successful in other rights, and with a passion to bring forward vineyard, make fine wine, in their view, to compete with Bordeaux. Well, it's a long game. And as I said earlier, it's a generational effort. And sometimes people come here with the passion to produce something remarkable, not quite understanding the level of effort that's required to be successful and bring it to market appropriately, et cetera. So I guess the only lesson I can get is patience.
Patience.
And focus.
Yes, yes. It's a something of a well-known idea in the Napa Valley that it's 10 years to revenue, 20 years to profit, and that's when you're doing everything exactly right. Even if you didn't know you were doing it right and you got lucky. Last question, Bruce. What's something that people would be surprised to learn about you?
Well, I guess what I'd say is that I'm a bit of a hermit. Which is an interesting juxtaposition because moving on to the wine side of the business now 15 years ago, it's a very extroverted role. I mean, you're presenting your wine, it's a very social endeavor. But I think both Heather and I tend to want to stay here on the ranch and be focused on here and with our families. So that might be surprising to people who know me through my wine side.
A good book, a bottle of white Burgundy, and being on the ranch. There could be worse ways to spend your days. Bruce, thank you. And for our complete interview with Bruce Phillips, go to winespeed.com. I'm Karen MacNeil.